Hello fellow book nerds, let's talk about these violent delights. So hello, welcome to yet another dedicated review. This is from a series I'm doing where I'm reviewing one new release a month, and you can vote in my releases of X month video on what you want me to release. The poll for next month, aka December, is closed, but the book I'm going to be reading is Something Roses, A Curse of Roses, and it's about eating flowers, so it's going to be wild. You should definitely check it. But we're here today to talk about a different new release, which is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. So if you don't know what this book is about, it's a 1920s Shanghai retelling of Romeo and Juliet. We follow Romeo and Juliet structure quite loosely. It's more about the rival families and the forbidden love part of it, and I would say the plot is quite original. So if you want to know a little bit more about the plot other than it's Romeo and Juliet retelling, if that's not enough for you, because it definitely was enough for me. We follow Juliet, Kai, or Tsai. I'm not sure how you say it. I think it's Tsai, they said. But Kai is kind of how Americans would probably read it. Or English people, whoever doesn't speak Chinese. So Juliet Tsai, she's the heir to the Scarlet Gang. Scarlet Gang is one of the two most powerful gangs in Shanghai. They're a Chinese gang, and they have this blood feud with the Montagov. Montagov is another gang, really big one in Shanghai, and they're a Russian family or Russian gang, and the heir of that gang is Roma Montagov. And Roma and Juliet met when they were 15 years old and fell in love. Something happened to split them apart. Juliet was shipped off to America for better education, and she comes back after 4 years to Shanghai to claim her title as the heiress of the gang, and she does not speak to Roma. They're completely went their separate ways. Alongside that, there's something really weird happening in Shanghai where people seem to have fallen from this madness. When the madness or the illness touches them, they claw at their own throats until they die. So it's a bit grim. And then Juliet and Roma have to kind of team up to figure out what this madness is and how to stop it. And this is all on the backdrop of 1920 Shanghai, which was really divided. This was back when the British, the Americans, the French would all go into China, claim some territories in cities. The city itself was really divided, and Chloe Gong definitely took all of that into the story and made it a really vivid background, but we're going to talk about that in a second. First, I wanted to start off with some content warnings. So I would say if you don't like gore, this might be a bit hard to read. The descriptions of the throat are quite graphic. On top of that, as you know, with the main Romeo and Juliet story, suicide is a big theme, and here definitely this madness makes people take away their own lives even though they don't want to take their own lives, but it's still kind of a suicide. So there's those content warnings. If you wanted a full list, I'm sure you can find it online. These are just some that I noticed. Well, okay, let's get into the review. First of all, can we just say that Chloe Gong is like a year younger than me. I think she's 22. I think at least that's something I saw on Twitter. The talent, the amazing writing skills, that just so good. I was so impressed. I mean, this is exactly like Eric Kwang, who wrote The Puppy War. She wrote that, what was she, like 19? Like the talent, the absolute talent of those women is just baffling to me. I'm like, why am I such a loser at 23 while they're out there living their best lives? But let's put that aside. Anyway, I just want to say I love Chloe Gong. I mean, she's gorgeous. It's not the reason why I picked up the book. Let's start off with plot then. Of course, it's a Romeo and Juliet retelling, so my question there was, will it be different enough? Will it be reminiscent enough? And will it be interesting enough? Because I feel like with retellings, there's always that line of, is it too similar? Is it just the same story kind of regurgitated? The same story regurgitated at you? Or is it so removed that you can barely even call it a retelling? So there's definitely a balancing act, and I really think this book hit it very well. So we definitely have this similar character archetypes, similar characters-ish to Romeo and Juliet. I mean, they are very different. I mean, Romeo and Juliet with me, I read the original book, I hated it. I was like, he had a girl he liked just like an hour before he fell in love with Juliet. She's 14, he's 19. It's been 3 days. You know, there's a lot of things But you cannot deny that it's an absolute iconic love story. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows what it's about. It's just iconic. But that being said, the original book I didn't really like, but there's a lot of retellings, reimaginings that I really, really enjoy. So for example, there's the Romeo plus Juliet movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, which I didn't like when I first watched, but then I watched it the second time, and I'm telling you, that scene at the end in the church, I bawled my eyes out. So that was like something. So I love that one. And there's Romeo et Juliette, which is a French musical, which I've watched probably about 6 times. Is this gonna go on the list of that amazing retelling that I actually love more than an actual story, or is it just gonna be like meh? And I really, really enjoyed the book. I don't know if you got that vibe from me being like Chloe Gong is the best human possible, but well, I don't really know enough about her to say that, but she's gorgeous and she's really talented, so there you go. But I really enjoyed the story, and I think plot was different enough. The spin of the monster causing the monster causes the madness, so it's not really a spoiler, it's in the prologue. The fact that they met when they were younger, and this is kind of a second chance romance on top of being star-crossed lovers. So there's a lot there for romance fans. The fact that there's also the backdrop of Shanghai, which like I said is so interesting, and that Offers not really explains how Shanghai was at the time, so what she changed, what she didn't change, and it sounds like she was being quite truthful. It was such an exciting backdrop and such an interesting backdrop, and just that was such a big part of the story. Atmosphere building was absolutely amazing, and I think that made the story really different and really interesting. The only thing I would say, I thought this was a standalone, so I was treating the whole story as a standalone, and I was waiting for the resolution, and bam, it's at least a duology, maybe a series. I know there's a sequel coming. I was waiting for it to build out to what I wanted it to, and then it didn't, so I was a bit like, oh no. I just crave standalones, and it's again not, every time I pick up a book I think it's a standalone, it's not a standalone, and I'm like, cool. It's not a book's fault, it's my fault for not knowing, but yeah, that's something to keep in mind. It's not a standalone, so the whole story of Romeo and Juliet isn't retold. For the Romeo and Juliet story itself, maybe like halfway point, I guess, maybe a bit further. As a book, I really enjoyed it. The plot I thought was really good. Let's move on to the writing. Like I said, I think Chloe Gong is a very good writer. I had a really good feeling for atmosphere, like I said, the building of the city and the intricacies of the gangs and all of that. It was really good. It was all very well set up, very well explained. It was to the point, not overtly explained. Nothing was like spelled out for you so you understand and you follow my meaning. It was more like, this is kind of like a sprinkle, and then you connect the sprinkles and it's all a whole thing. So for example, there is a transgender character in the book. When we first meet her, we find out that she's a fraternal twin, and I didn't really connect the dots. I was like, cool that she's a twin, and then they talked about her Adam's apple, and I was like, wait, what? So that's when I realized that she was a fraternal brother, but she is a transgender character. So I love that representation and that inclusion of the character, but at the same time, my point here is that it was very subtly said, and then at the end it was like kind of explained, and kind of we got more into it. But I really like that, and I think that was a lot of this book. It was not told to you, it was not served on a silver platter. It was really just gently nudged, but you got a very good feeling for the atmosphere, for the city, for the politics, for everything. You really understood where everyone was coming from. Something that I found really funny, I don't know if it's like good or bad, it's just like, you know, sometimes when the characters have these like whole flashback in their head and like a whole monologue in their head, and it kind of doesn't affect anything. Not in this book. In this book, whenever a character is like thinking, they like literally like almost walk into a wall, or they just like don't listen to anyone, and it's really realistic in the sense that they just space out, and then you're just like brought back to earth, and you feel like the whole time you were just on this journey with the character because you went on this detour, and then you're back to earth and you're like, oh shit, okay, sorry. Alright, then let's talk about characters. So Juliet, she is not like you remember her from Romeo and Juliet. Well, yeah, she's ruthless. She's like the gangster. She's a girl who's an heir to a really big gang, so she has to prove herself and like prove herself ruthless. And I didn't get the Selena syndrome where she talks about how ruthless she is, but she never does anything ruthless. No, this girl like says something and then follows through, and she actually she's not playing. So I love that. I really like Juliet. I think she was a great character. She was a good contrast to Roma, who really he's not a pacifist, but he doesn't really enjoy the life. He doesn't want it. Not that she wants to kill people, whatever, but she does what's necessary, and he's a bit doesn't want to do it, but then he has to do it. So I really enjoyed him. I think he was a good character as well. I'm just saying they were well contrasted and kind of fit each other very well. But yeah, both of them I found enjoyable, very different from the original. I mean, Juliet was basically a blank slate. All the other secondary characters, I would say they were very well developed, maybe except for one, but I feel like that's definitely going to come up in the later book and you get some hints. Everyone I enjoy, like I said, I really enjoy the diversity as well. So there's a lot of Asian characters, there's a lot of Russian characters, but even Asian characters, like one is Korean, there's, like I said, a transgender character, and it just feels like a very alive and well thought out cast. Everyone had a very specific personality that I really got. I didn't feel like any of them were just there for no reason. So I think that was really well executed. Really enjoyed the characters. I would have one complaint. I feel like they tried using one of the characters' misfortune to make us really feel bad for one of the main characters because it was someone dear to them, but that the relationship was really underdeveloped and I didn't feel the love there. So it was really not as easy for me to be like, oh yeah, okay, this is big deal, because for me it just felt a little you talked once, I'm not feeling this. But alas, that was my only complaint really. So overall I think it was pretty good. Alright, now let's have a chat about themes of this book. So there were so many, but definitely a really big theme was colonization and the loss of culture, loss of language, loss of identity that a country or a city or people of the city have once colonized, once people try to take away their culture. I think it was mentioned that England never really colonized China in a sense that you would think how they colonized America or something. It was a bit different, but they definitely messed up the country a lot. They had so much influence and they really messed up with the original culture. They really put their stamp on the country, and it was really it was really discussed what that can do and how that splintered the city, how it splintered the people, how it made the situation so unstable, how that makes it so much easier for gangs and crime to persevere. So really interesting, really nuanced talk there, I think. I feel like the author has very good grasp on that. I'm not obviously an expert in Shanghai history or Chinese history in terms of that period of time, but I feel like the author really knew what she was talking about and she made me understand what the city would have felt like back then. So I think it was really well done. Obviously not the expert on this topic at all. What was really particularly interesting for me, the Communist Party has quite a big role in the book, as in that was before they came into power, but that was when they were riling everyone, and you can really see the dissatisfaction of workers that could have led to something like this. Well, it did. And knowing now the political state of China, it's really interesting to see the perspective of this book on where the start came from. Obviously it's a fictionalized account, but I think it's very interesting and I really enjoyed that part. I wrote down interracial relationships as a theme because I felt like that would be very interesting conversation to have. Juliet's obviously Chinese and then Roma is Russian, so you have completely two different cultures, two different races there. But I feel like it wasn't explicitly discussed. It was more in discussion of different gangs and different families and values there. And I think another theme that was a very interesting inversion from the theme of Romeo and Juliet is suicide. So like I said, Romeo and Juliet, I mean, suicide is a very big part of that. The suicide in this book was the madness and people killing themselves without their own violation, but it was a suicide in a sad sense. That way it wasn't voluntary, but you did inflict yourself. I think that's quite an interesting inversion of the theme from the original to the retelling. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to discuss. I absolutely adore the book, and usually my last segment is to share my favorite quote with you. If you want to get the cheapest book, go to Apple Book. That was $6.99 for me. Otherwise it's $8.99 or $14 for an ebook. Let me share my favorite quote with you. Do you still love me? Do you not listen to me when I speak? I love you. I have always loved you. I don't know, it's just something about do you listen when I speak that seems very reminiscent of me and my boyfriend. That's it from this video, I guess. I would highly recommend these Violent Delights if you enjoy high stakes, action, gang wars, if you enjoy reading kind of a historical fiction, kind of a fantasy, if you enjoy a good bit of romance but it's not overwhelming by any means, even though it's Romeo and Juliet, then I definitely recommend it as well. And I think I'm gonna give it probably 4.5 or 5 stars because I did really enjoy it. I'm excited for the sequel. I'll definitely try to pick it up. But that's it from me then, you guys. Let me know in the comments, did you read these Violent Delights? Did you enjoy it? What do you think? Do you even like the original Romeo and Juliet? How do you feel about retellings? I just want to know everything. Any thought you have, please put it down in the comments. I want to interact, okay? If you're new here and you enjoyed this video, if you could subscribe, I would really appreciate it. I feel somewhere like almost 40% of people watching the videos aren't subscribed. So my goal for the end of the year is 550 subscribers. So if you wanted to help me out, I would so appreciate it. Please give it a like as well. And that's it from me. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!